Hello, I'm Scott Clover, and you're listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast. This podcast series is about intuition, healing, and creating new energetic patterns that benefit you in your daily life. In my private practice, I help people heal from a diverse range of issues, including self-acceptance, trauma release, managing anxiety, emboldening self-worth, and creative expression. In today's episode, we talk patterns, how the patterns we inherit and the ones we create early in life can affect our daily decisions, how engaging opposite energies inspires healing, and why some people are more sensitive than others. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast with Scott Clover. My name's Carl Munson, and this is Season 2, Episode 7. We've made our journey through the chakras. We're going to 8, 9, and 10, and talking about the relevance of patterns. Hello, Scott. How are you today?
I'm well. Hi, Carl.
It's great to be talking to you again. So patterns. Well, I know what patterns are, but how are they relevant to your intuitive energy work here?
Yeah, so patterns are everywhere. Patterns exist to create other patterns, to create other patterns. I think math took a huge leap when fractals were discovered. And then you see fractals in the way they're displayed, that it becomes artistry. So you realize that math is a pattern that can create art, which is a pattern, which is music, which is just a series of patterns, as well as your shirt that you're wearing is woven. That's a woven pattern. But if you take it microscopically or even smaller than that, there's energy strata that forms patterns to then create matter that makes up the cells or makes up the wood that, makes up the table that you're sitting at.
And we do like it, don't we, as human beings? We look for order. We look for pattern. We find that reassuring, presumably because it is what everything's made of.
Yes, and we as humans may see things as chaotic until we take a step back and take a step back and take a step back. If you take 1,000 steps back and look at it, you might recognize a pattern.
Yes.
But going through it in the moment, no.
Yes, often feels like that. In the moment, no pattern, complete chaos. But yes, from a distance, that's song of the day possibly then. From a distance, all is harmony and the patterns that we're talking about here.
Yes, that was Bette Midler.
Bette Midler, okay.
Yeah.
As you pull back your focus, everything comes into order and you can see the patterns and escape the chaos of everyday life, possibly.
Possibly, but then it can be used against us. Our governments have been using order from chaos.
Yes.
Which is they create chaos and then they come in and create order to make us feel better. Well, I would have felt better not having the original chaos without needing a solution that maybe limits my sense of self, shall we say.
Okay. So let's talk a bit more about how they are related to the chakras. And we're moving to 8th, 9th, and 10th. Archetypes, soul purpose, and past lives. And we've made this journey through the chakras so far in Season 2 and in all the episodes that we've done this far. Could we briefly talk about those 8, 9, and 10?
Yeah, so the chakras, as we talked about earlier, we talked about more of the corporeal-based ones, the ones based in the body. Generally, when I work up until the 10th chakra. Sometimes I go higher than that, generally not necessary most of the times, unless I'm working with somebody very intuitive or we're going into a pattern that just doesn't seem to be negotiable or navigatable. Then we'll go higher up and higher up. But generally, I stick to the 10 chakras. And when I do a chakra readings on people, I go to 10. And generally, I see the 8th chakra as the archetypes. We've talked about that before. Carolyn Mace talks a lot about them. We all share 4 archetypes, 8 or 9 on top of those that deal with our sense of self as who we are and make up the ideas, decisions, thought patterns of how we create ourselves, like a mandala, as I say. Yeah. And we all share 4 of those archetypes, which are the child archetype, and that child can splinter off into nature child, divine child, magical child. Orphan is one that's very palpable for people. And that one's also quite literal. And then there's the guardian of choice, which is the saboteur, and the guardian of faith, which is the prostitute archetype. And then the victim archetype, which is self-esteem. And that's where my healing realm works, is the guardian of self-esteem really aligns with your body energy and then promotes healing. A lot of healing can come from self-esteem and self-acceptance as well.
Okay, so that's the 8th chakra. We move into the 9th?
Yeah, soul purpose. Generally, as I said, if I do a chakra reading on people, when I read the 9th chakra, it generally, to me, I read that's where their soul purpose is. whether that means they have to overcome something or they're destined to express their energy a certain way. And generally, when I do those readings or I read that for people, they go, oh, yeah, their eyes widen and they say, yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. Or I've been reliving that pattern and I haven't quite learned that lesson yet. And then I encourage them to understand what that pattern means and what that lesson, once it's learned for them, how that can open up other areas that may have been closed down to them before because they were too busy concentrating on this fissure that was open and draining their energy, if you will. Yeah.
Okay. And then the one that people seem to love, right? Past lives, 10th chakra.
Yeah, generally the 10th chakras for me is amongst other things, is the past life chakra. I was actually working on it with a client today. They tend to echo through for people. And sometimes that echo is louder in some people than others. And there's certain patterns or physical maladies, physical manifestations, illnesses that seem to repeat. And if you sit quietly and ask yourself, where does that pattern come from? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you sit and wonder, where does that pattern come from? Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's yours. You actually feel that it's ethereal or it's coming from somewhere else.
So your work, it's all about getting the energies working for you rather than against you. I know that's a bit polar, but roughly speaking, if we take that here and we're talking about energetic patterns, we're talking about the 8th, 9th, and 10th chakras, we might see these things repeating in our lives from that perspective, right? And, this keeps happening to me. That person always does this. Whilst it might appear that it's that person doing it, or the external event bringing that kind of energy, why is it that we're attracting that constantly?
Right. What synchronicity is happening within you that you keep finding these people?
Yes.
Right. So at a certain point, you got to look in the mirror and go, maybe it is me. And half the time it probably is you or more. But understanding those patterns, as I said, looking at them, seeing them, observing them, that's 55% of the challenge of the battle. If you can accept the existing reality of what's going on, then you can see the pattern easier.
Yes.
If you ignore it or say, I don't want this to be happening to me, I don't want this to be happening to me, well, then you're keeping it somewhat at arm's length and you're not going to negotiate or see a pattern because you're trying to deny it.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you accept what's actually happening, or I can't believe, this is a one I talk about a lot in work, is I can't believe my husband or my partner acts a certain way. Well, you've been married to that person for 30 years. It's not surprising they've acted that way for they're 50, they've acted that way for 50 years. Yes. So at what point do you accept the existing reality and stop challenging what that person does? The same thing apply to your business partner. Apply it to your professor. If they keep doing the same thing and that same thing keeps vexing you or bothering you, then at some point you have to accept the existing reality or let it keep bothering you.
Okay. So acceptance, as we've noted before, Scott, is a massive part of the work. And then there's some extra work to do to maybe deal with that energy in a different way, explore a different aspect of yourself that gives you a different result. So you accept it, and then what do you do? Yeah,
you accept it, or either prior to accepting it, you work on it. And sometimes working on it creates that acceptance. Okay. The more you work on it, the more you see it, the more you realize what it is, then you accept it. Mm-hmm. And one way I help people work on it, whether they've accepted it yet or not, is what we call engaging opposite energies. So the polarity, we talked about the Kabbalion and one of the natures of polarity, that everything has a north and a south, or a right or a left, or an up or a down, or an on or an off. And imagine some of our energy systems are on-off switches. Well, I try to encourage people to make them dimmers.
Yes.
So it's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's somewhere in the middle of that. And one way to help doing that is engaging opposite energies. So if a client comes to me and says, oh, I see this pattern, this pattern, this pattern, what's involved in this pattern is frustration. Frustration, I keep getting frustrated. And I'll say, okay, what's the opposite of frustration? So for you, what's the opposite of frustration?
Ease.
Great. So if you close your eyes and you bring essence of ease and bring it up near and oppose it to the frustration, let them meld together.
You took me by surprise there. And yes, Okay, yeah. I was feeling some frustration in the belly, and it got washed over like fresh Atlantic water or no, what's that? Warm Mediterranean water of ease over the knot of frustration. I actually felt that. I had to change my posture.
Yeah. You may not create ease by adding it to frustration. By combining the two, you may create something completely different. But at least you're not stuck in those polarities. At least you're out of the rut and you have more choice into how to navigate your energies going from there.
I see. Okay, so I mean, in the rational mind, you would want to just switch over, wouldn't you? I'm fed up of being frustrated. I just want some ease. Give me ease. But it's a gradual process. It is a process and not a switch.
Right. Yes, it can be or should be negotiated as a dimmer or a slide scale.
Yeah.
Because you want to stay away from those polarities.
Mm-hmm.
Staying in ease all the time, well, how would you know what frustration is?
Yes, true. Yeah.
Right? Beth Orton sings a song called If I Never Saw the Sunshine, I Wouldn't Mind the Rain.
Mm.
So it's nice to know what your opposite is, but you don't have to run and hide in the opposite corner. You can stay in the middle and enjoy your life and create more ease and less frustration by accepting that those two things both exist.
Yes, and then you choose, don't you, rather than in any sense be a victim.
Choose or lean.
Yes.
Yeah. And so healing, in my work, healing isn't a switch. It isn't an off and on switch, as I said. It's more of a gradation of self-appreciation and self-esteem.
Yeah.
And it's the way you intend your actions and the way you intend to feel that can have just as much impact as how you feel.
Yeah.
And wanting to feel better is just going to create more wanting to feel better.
Yes.
So take the want out, the want word, or the W word as I'm known to call. It's sort of a 4-letter word. And stop wanting these things and just appreciate who you are for what you are, and then engage the energy in which you want to install. So don't say, I want that from afar. Bring it in, experience it. Use your imagination. And there's an expression out there that really vexes me too called fake it till you make it.
Oh, yes. What's wrong with that?
Well, it's used a lot in the rehabilitation communities, and I just feel like they could nuance the phrasing of it a little bit.
Oh, go on.
The energy behind it is good, but why don't you say, I'm going to try and be that a little bit until I understand how to be that more?
Yes. Okay.
So grow into it. You're not faking something. You're intending to shift your cellular matter or your energy pattern or your thought pattern into a new pattern. Yeah. And just because you're not in that pattern doesn't mean you're faking it. It means your intention is to shift the pattern you're in. But if you say, I'm faking it now, it just makes it a disingenuous act as far as I'm concerned.
Totally understood. And we're more about tasting and allowing, aren't we, rather than forcing and a sense of sort of competitiveness.
Yeah, a lot of people want to force it. A lot of people want to win.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to be the top of the pyramid. And that causes a lot of discordance in children, in understanding how we socialize. It causes competitiveness and narcissism and war and, all these things that we consider detrimental that balance out the goodness that we have. I've been talking recently about how people want to be better. I want to be the best one. I want to be best. I want to be better. I want to be best. I base my healing on seeing patterns in the individual and helping them. I don't base it on seeing the 9th realm of the Palladian vortex. Seeing the 9th realm of the Palladian vortex is great until what are you going to do with it? Yes. Well, what are you going to do with that knowledge? I don't know. You're going to spend a lot of time and you're not going to live in the world that you live in. So I try to cater my energy and my intentions for receiving information to more the bricks and mortar, as I said, or the human body or the situation the person's in.
Yeah, and away from the kind of novelty value and more into the hands-on, realistic, integral and robust healing work.
I'm trying to get people to understand that maybe be useful at what you're good at. And be useful to someone else or be useful to yourself in the patterns and the things that you're good at. You don't have to be the best person. The best person is 4 countries away, or the best person lives in another state. So that doesn't matter. You're never going to meet the best person of whatever you're trying to do. So be what you can be, authentically and be useful at it. And if you can't be useful to others, be at least useful to yourself.
Oh, that's so lovely. I mean, there's so much more self-acceptance and self-esteem in that potentially, isn't there?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, it takes the judgment out. And as I talked about last season, you can't have joy and judgment in the same moment. So if you take the judgment out, there's a lot more potential for joy. If you leave the judgment in, you're guaranteeing joy won't interact in that instance.
Excellent. Okay. Patterns there, the chakras. I wanted to take you back, if I may, and ask you about how you work with people, just as a bit of a refresher here. What's it like? I mean, are you visualizing? Are you feeling? Are you intuiting? How's the session working?
So I used to be half in person, half over the phone. And then with COVID now, I'm 100% over the phone. It's best for me to not visualize the individual with my eyeballs. It's easier for me to just see and sense them with my intuition. So the phone works really well. It's easier for me to break the body and the energy fields down into quadrants. So instead of looking at the whole individual, I break the body into 4 quadrants: front, back, right, left. So front left, front right, back left, back right. And those quadrants help me understand where the energy is flowing or coming in, where it's stagnant, where it's coagulated. Is it auric? Is it outside the body coming in? Is it stuck in the auric field? Is the shield of the auric field too strict and not allowing anything in? Is it not permeable at all? So these are all things that I generally try to sense if I'm led there. So breaking the body into quadrants is one way that I read people. The other is holograms. I make sure I try to put people out in front of me so I see them as a hologram. A lot of healers, especially when they start, they want to feel it all in their bodies. But over the course of even a couple of years, that can be really detrimental to their physical body because they keep taking on, stories and stories of ancestors and things of that nature. And if they're not properly clearing yourself, or you're not properly taking care of your patterns yourself to protect yourself while you're doing the work, that can take its toll over time. So yes, sometimes I feel things in my body, but I tend to prefer to see it as a hologram, generally out in front of me or to the side of me. And then I break that hologram down into smaller pieces. And then I zoom in or out and ask the questions about the energy that I'm sensing. So if I see like a coagulation of energy in somebody's spleen, that leads me to think that they're empathic and they've picked up a lot of people's empathic sense about other people over the years, and it got a clog. And when your spleen chakra is clogged and you're an empath, it can be very discordant to feeling good.
I bet, yeah.
So that would be an example.
Okay, amazing. So that's how you work. People tuning in will be thinking, does this work for everybody? I mean, what you were describing there sounded to me, just as an aside for a moment, like intuitive artificial intelligence, like in the way that a computer would render up a hologram to scan somebody's health. You're doing that with and what is arguably an ancient technology, right? Humans must have been doing this forever, really. And the modern rational medical mindset has kind of overshadowed it. But actually, what I wanted to say was, can everybody access this? Can everyone heal themselves or be healed in this way, or at all for that matter?
Yes. I mean, look at the placebo effect. Just pretending people are taking medicine can cure people.
Right.
So if you take the placebo effect and you nuance it, you massage it, you embellish it, you make it your own, and then you create something new out of that idea, is that we create the world in which we live in. So if we observe a cell or we observe part of our body that is discordant with how it should be, send the message to reapply the original programming, for example. Mm-hmm. Send the intention of the will to your foot that's cramped to release that, or that tumor, or that this, that, and the other thing. It works really well for trauma release, for PTSD, for emotions and things that are held in the body. It also works for physical ailments. I have a lot of clients that over the course of months will call me and say, that thing we worked on is not there anymore. Or that cyst I had that, ended up being my mother's energy stuck in my uterus is gone once you help me release it. And so it really helps to me to guide the individual to letting it go. I'm not one that'll say, let me go in there for you on your behalf and pull the energy out. I'm more helping you coerce the energy out on your behalf for whatever pattern is there, for whatever reason it's there, and whether it's turned cellular, whether it's gotten to the body yet or not. It's on you to release it.
Okay, that's an important distinction then, isn't it? Heal thyself. You are empowering others to heal themselves rather than healing them for them.
If you go to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, I don't feel well," why not? I don't know. Well, you're at an impasse.
Yes.
So you come to somebody like me and say, "Scott, I don't feel well." And I'll say, "Okay, let's look at some of these patterns that over the years and over your lifetimes have influenced you and see where these patterns interact, and where they interact, they're not conducive. Let's heal that area and then see what happens." And if you heal that area, maybe it'll ameliorate or heal the area next to it. Or if you come back and we do repeated sessions, we work on something to build up a lattice of healing energy that then you can grow your own vines back onto.
Okay, I get it. So you're creating a context for healing, aren't you? As much as like zeroing in on something in the way that Western medicine might, and in its own way, that would I'm guessing that would have an exponential effect. The more you can create a healing context and environment for somebody, the more healing can take place for that person with them at the steering wheel.
Yes, and that's, I think, where the intuitive part comes in, is because a lot of our subconscious, it's like sort of playing tag with a child in a parking structure. There's those big pillars and the child runs around one side, you go left, they go right, and you never catch up to them. Well, if your childhood psyche is trying to keep you from facing something that it endured, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
You're never going to look it in the eye. You're never going to stop it and say, "I need to get a handle on this," because it's always going to elude you. So you come to somebody like me that says, "Hey, let me help you trace that pattern down so it's less elusive. See it for what it actually was, not what you've created over 30 years retelling that story in your mind." If we go back to that original pattern, it's a lot easier to release that original pattern than it is a pattern that's been retold 30 years that's morphed into something completely different.
Yes, okay. And extend this context idea, presumably you would be supportive of people exploring other modalities to work alongside.
Oh, yeah. I say energy work is very complementary. You don't go to an energy worker because you broke your arm. You go to the doctor. You go to the hospital when you break your ankle and they fix it, because that's what doctors do. But if you go to a doctor with something ambiguous that's energetic or emotional and they don't speak that, then you go and find someone who speaks your language, because you're going to be listened to and you're going to feel more appreciated, which will increase your self-esteem, which will allow you to heal. But if you go to the doctor and you say, "I don't feel well," and they say, "Well, you have fibromyalgia," and you say, "What's fibromyalgia?" And they say, "Well, technically we don't know. We just call everyone that has your symptoms that."
Yes.
Then you're not feeling heard and your self-esteem is being taken away.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so there's a whole world there, isn't there? Which, in listening to you and using the word complementary, it strikes me that the therapies that tend to be put into that complementary alternative bracket are generally energetic modalities, aren't they? Acupuncture, for example.
I'm a big fan of acupuncture. I get it done personally. Salt rooms, like sitting in a room full of Himalayan salt walls for your lungs, those are great.
What? Where do you get that?
A lot of even small cities now have salt rooms. Just Google salt room in your area and you'll probably find a salt room.
Okay.
I had a sound facial the other day, which was amazing. It was sound vibrations put through my neck muscles and my face.
You said a sound facial. I mean, what is that? Is that like a facial as you would understand it from cosmetic beauty world, but done on an energetic level?
It was sound waves. It was, I think, a small doses of electricity and then sound waves. There were no chemicals used. Whatever cream she put on was plant-based, and it was great.
What, you wear a mask or what? Or what does the headgear look like?
No, it just, I wore little glasses like you would wear in a tanning booth, and then they put red light therapy on my face. And then after that, they did a sound thumping. So they had like a wand, almost like a dental pick that vibrates, except it was a sound wand, and that's sound waves. And they put it into my neck muscles and released neck tension muscles and nerves in there that have been stuck for years. I was like, "Whoa!" I walked out of there just smiling from ear to ear. One of the things that I found in New York, and I realized it exists elsewhere as well, is pelvic floor physical therapy. If you have anxiety, if you have issues with your pelvic region, male or female, there are ways now and practitioners that go in and digitally manipulate the inner walls of your anus or your vagina that will release the basic tension muscles in your pelvic floor. When I had it done, I thought, oh my gosh, every uptight New Yorker should have this done. So if you're out there and Google in your area, pelvic floor physical therapy.
How did that leave you feeling? I mean, that to me is akin with the best that I hear about tantric healing, which obviously takes place in a particular way, and it's more of a sort of sexual yoga. What did you feel like when you said that every New Yorker, every uptight New Yorker should try this? What is it like?
Well, it's just like a massage, just on a more intimate part of your body.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So I went to Solstice Physical Therapy in Manhattan, but I've Googled it for clients all over the world. There's places up and down the eastern seaboard, West Coast, that do this intimate physical therapy. Women with reproductive issues, women with repeated UTIs. Those can have energetic reasons behind them. I mean, imagine being a female growing up in our society and being taught, well, I guess sex is going to have to be done to me because that's what society tells me to do.
Yeah.
And then trying to express yourself energetically through your pelvic region. So a lot of times women shut their energies down there as a protection mechanism, and later in life they want to reproduce, or they want to have more sexual adventures after they've gotten over something. Yeah. Well, this is a physical intervention as well as, we can work on it energetically. And I think combining modalities, the physical, the mental, the energetic, is a great way to create a trifecta of healing, that you understand yourself better on so many different levels.
That makes complete sense, doesn't it? That the area has been sexualized, doesn't it? Thereby precluding energetic change, transformation. If we see it in a certain way, that will determine the health of that part of the body.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And it works for men about their bodies if they're not, muscular enough. Men have eating disorders. Women get overly sexualized at such young age that can have really constricting and protracting protective intentions. Yes. But if that protection isn't acted upon or released, then it stays, and then it's forgotten about, and it lingers, and then it causes problems later in life.
Interesting.
So there's energetic ways to go about that, and then there's physical ways to complement the energy work, or vice versa.
And they can work together. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorts of people, Scott, who are more open or more empathic, intuitive, and in line with the work you do. I mean, all the workshops I've ever been on in my life, and I think, what is that? Sensitive New Age guy, Snag. All the workshops I ever went to as a younger man tend to be more women there. What are you finding demographically with the world you're in?
Back in my day when I took classes, I was rarely the only male. And if once or twice I saw a straight male in the group.
Yes.
It tends to be mostly women in that age group, but that's the ones that are seeking out more information about it.
Yeah.
In terms of who is actually more sensitive, I think that's a different question. And I think sensitivities come from, there's two schools of thought. One is children who've been through trauma. If your parent had a short attention span, or was violent, or was an alcoholic, or took pills and you needed them fresh, then you needed to be hyper aware of when you got the attention from your parent until they tipped that scale and were no longer able to give you that attention.
Yeah.
If your parent only hit you because somebody else was out of the house, then you had to be hyper aware of when that person left the house so you could leave with them. So being hyper aware as a child can create an empathy in a way that can be overwhelming for adults.
Yes.
So that's one place where empathy comes from. Other places it's genetic. In my case, my intuitive skills, it's a genetic pattern that comes from my father's side. And couple those two things together, then you've just got a sponge. You've just got, as I said, a satellite dish waiting to be acted upon. And so early traumatized empaths become a lot of times overly empathic adults, or over-serving. Oh my God, they say sorry a lot. They overgive, things like that.
Yeah, interesting. Fascinating.
And those empathic people are what creates helpful intentions also.
Yeah.
So it's not good nor bad. It is what it is. Accept that existing reality of the personality type you are, or you're giving. As I said, we've talked about bleeding hearts before. Accept what you are, and then figure out where that pattern came from, and then tweak it so it serves you as well.
Wonderful. Okay, you said how you work when we've revisited that, which has been great. So we talked about the context of healing and the healing environment, and that really refers to the individual. Are people doing this in greater numbers? I mean, basically, are there healing communities now, or can we heal in community?
Yes, and that's one of the cornerstones of my work is healing in community. So well said. Healing in community to me is 2 or more people sharing a healing intention.
Yeah.
That coupling multiplies exponentially the potential of the healing environment. So one person's intention sets one person's intention. If you combine that with 2, 4, 7 people in the room, you take a group class or a Zoom group meeting. If you share the intention of the other people in the group, then that can really have an effect on you in a different way because it reaches you in that first chakra as we talked about. It helps the energy enter into your tribal chakra to say, oh, I feel safe here. And in feeling safe in this communal environment. And once again, that can be one-on-one. A lot of my clients just appreciate being heard or being seen. They like to see me because I'm a visionary and I see things. So they like to be seen. So a lot of times I'll say, I see you. I see this pattern for what it is. And that makes them feel better because they are now sharing something with somebody. That's a bond.
Yes.
So the more bonds you make, then the greater potential there is for healing. The analogy is the tide rises all the boats in the harbor.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I guess if you're seen, if you're heard, that can become an accelerator for healing.
It can become an accelerator for healing and also sharing that intention.
Yeah.
As I said, if you've got 7 people taking a class and all 7 of you share the intention of healing in group, then that has a more palpable energy to you than just you sitting in your house or your apartment by yourself saying, I intend healing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't that a lovely thing? I mean, I think we are in the times in the world now where that's more possible. On the other hand, you mentioned New York before, possibly the most skeptical, cynical, and brash people on the planet. No, I mean, I don't mean that badly, but that is the stereotype. What's it like being there and being an energetic healer when you're referring to the subtle energies and things that people can't see and the things that people actually might be quite critical of? What's that been like for you?
Oh, it runs the gamut. Sometimes people come and see me and they don't do their research. So they sit down and say, okay, I don't know what this is. My friend told me about it, so fix me. And I'll say, well, first of all, let's help you fix you. And secondly, I'm going to encourage you to do this work and I'm going to guide you with it, but I'm not going to be the only one involved. So yeah, there have been over times or at dinner parties and stuff where I'll say what I do and people are like, well, what the hell is that? And then I'll say, well, it entails this or this. And then there's generally some mocking or some dismissive or someone else at the table goes, oh, a friend of mine saw somebody like you 2 years ago and, their hip doesn't hurt anymore, et cetera. Yeah. So it really can run the gambit. But we are in society are taught to distrust this kind of intuitive belief structure until we overwhelmingly believe it. Mm-hmm. So the naysayers, probably don't come to me. And the fence walkers, they generally leaned over to my side after the session.
Yes.
There's times where people say, oh, I don't believe in this stuff. And I'll say, well, give it an hour and let's do a session. And then they'll say, how do you see that in my body? You're not even in the same room with me. How do you know where my hand is on my body? Or how did you know that my brother treated me that way? Or how did you know that my sister had an accident? Yeah. It's because it's in the field. It's in the energy pattern. And I'm one of those people that sees those patterns. So bringing it back to patterns. But generally, I don't try to convince people of who I am or what I do because I don't have to. I've been doing this long enough to know that my reality is based in energy healing and based in the ability to see and sense patterns.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough.
So get on board with that or, stay off the truck. It's fine with me. I don't convert. I don't have the patience for it.
I get it. But what I'm interested in is that guy who you mentioned, and I'm assuming it is a guy, well, what's that? Having quite a bad reaction to what you've said. Is there any hope, or let me put it this way, is there any healing hope for that particular kind of personality? Can you bypass that skepticism, cynicism, and negativity?
I think so. I tend to steer clear of the psychic word in mixed company. That's why I use words like intuition and energy, because psychic, especially in New York, there's a lot of people that have crystal balls on the street and they want to read your palm and do that kind of things. And that's just, I don't associate myself with that type of energy. I sense and see things as a pattern to heal. So that person would have to at least have some inkling or understanding that what I'm sensing is affirming to them.
Okay.
So they would have to lean into it a little bit.
No, I understand that. You mentioned there the crystal ball person on the street, and you don't associate with that. How are we differentiating you from that person? Or how are you differentiating yourself from that person?
My intention is to inform you how to heal yourself. I mean, it's in the name on the masthead there.
Yes.
So I'm an intuitive energy healer. So I'm not inclined to help you find love unless that's going to help you heal yourself.
Yes.
But I'm also not going to build your hopes up into finding love where you're absolutely not going to find it.
Yeah.
That would be disingenuous. And that goes against why I have my shingle out in the first place.
Absolutely.
So I share the intention to help you heal. If you bring me that shared intention, then we've got something to work on.
Absolutely. And I've experienced that firsthand for myself. And I thank you for that again. And it's not about novelty, is it? Or sort of impressing people. It's not a stage show. It is getting on board and going the journey of healing yourself. And so thank you, Scott. That's what people can look forward to with you, scottclover.com. It's been great talking to you again. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Carl. You've been listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast with me, Scott Clover. Thanks to Carl Munson for the great discussion and to Corey Tutt for the music you're listening to. In my private practice, I encourage people to heal what holds you back and feel better in your body. If you need more help with that process, I'm available for healing sessions by phone internationally. Visit scottclover.com for more information. Be well, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and solely as a self-help tool for your own use. I'm not providing medical, psychological, or nutrition therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and/or mental health provider about your specific health situation. For my full disclaimer, please go to scottclover.com/disclaimer.